EVO. This series contains adult language and depictions of graphic violence. Listener discretion is advised. NASA astronaut Gordon Cooper was conducting routine orbital observations during his Faith 7 Mercury mission in May of 1963, when something appeared on his radar that would challenge everything NASA thought it understood about what exists in space around Earth. Cooper was approaching the final hours of his 22-orbit mission when his radar detected an object ahead of his spacecraft, something large, moving in a trajectory that defied orbital mechanics. The object appeared to be tracking Faith 7's path, maintaining consistent distance while demonstrating controlled flight characteristics. Quote, "Houston, I have a visual on an unidentified object. It appears to be maintaining position relative to my spacecraft." What Cooper observed was a green, glowing object that moved with obvious intelligence and purpose. The object maintained its position for several minutes before accelerating away at speeds that exceeded anything in NASA's inventory. Cooper's sighting was tracked by ground-based radar stations, confirming that something was sharing orbital space with Faith 7. But when Cooper returned to Earth and attempted to discuss his observations, he was told that the incident would not be included in his official mission debriefing. Quote, "They made it clear that certain aspects of my mission were not to be discussed publicly. What I saw was real, documented by multiple tracking stations, and unlike anything in our aerospace inventory." Cooper's encounter would prove to be the first in a series of documented sightings by astronauts who discovered that Earth's orbital environment contains phenomena that official space agencies prefer not to acknowledge. Objects that appear to observe rather than simply exist. Lights that move with apparent purpose through the vacuum. Welcome back to The Devil Within. You're listening to Voices in the Void, Episode 2. What follows us up there? As Commander Reed Weissman, pilot Victor Glover, mission specialist Christina Koch, and Canadian astronaut Jeremy Hansen continue their historic Artemis II lunar orbit, they're experiencing the profound isolation that has challenged human psychology since we first ventured beyond Earth's protective atmosphere. Today, we explore the documented visual phenomena that have followed astronauts into the void, the lights, the objects, and the presences that suggest space isn't as empty as we assumed. Chapter 4 begins now. The Watchers. The most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious. So, the most extensively documented case of anomalous visual phenomena in space occurred during the STS-75 space shuttle mission in February of 1996, when the crew captured video footage of objects exhibiting flight characteristics that defied conventional explanation. The incident occurred during deployment of the tethered satellite system when a 12-mile-long conducting tether broke free from the shuttle. Mission specialist Claude Nicollier was filming the drifting tether when dozens of luminous objects appeared in the field of view. The objects, ranging from small points of light to disc-shaped formations several miles in diameter, moved through space with controlled trajectories that demonstrated apparent intelligence. NASA's official explanation attributed the phenomena to ice particles and space debris, but detailed analysis revealed flight characteristics inconsistent with orbital debris. Quote, "The objects showed controlled acceleration, deceleration, and directional changes that are impossible for passive debris in orbital mechanics," explained Dr. Jack Kasher, who conducted extensive analysis of the footage. Most significantly, the objects appeared to respond to the shuttle's presence. Several formations altered trajectories to move closer to the shuttle, while others positioned themselves to observe the crew's activities. The footage shows objects that appear to be conducting systematic reconnaissance of human space operations. Shuttle Commander Andrew Allen described the experience as, quote, "unsettling in ways that had nothing to do with mission safety concerns." The objects demonstrated what appeared to be curiosity about human space activities. Quote, "They weren't just moving randomly. They showed investigative behavior, a approaching, observing, then moving away in patterns that suggested they were gathering information about our capabilities and intentions. The STS-75 incident was not isolated. International Space Station crews have documented similar observations of luminous objects that demonstrate controlled flight characteristics. Expedition 6 Commander Ken Bowersox reported observing, quote, structured formations of lights that maintained consistent geometries while moving through space. Quote, what we observed had organized structure and controlled movement that suggested technological origin. These weren't random phenomena. They appeared to be artificial objects under intelligent control. Russian cosmonaut Pavel Vinogradov captured video footage of objects that appeared to emerge from Earth's atmosphere and accelerate into deep space, showing controlled acceleration, achieving velocities far exceeding human aerospace capability. Quote, the objects would appear below us, accelerate rapidly upward past our orbital altitude, and disappear into deep space. The acceleration rates were beyond anything achievable with current propulsion technology. European Space Agency astronaut Paolo Nespoli documented, quote, surveillance behavior by unidentified objects that would position themselves to observe crew activities during extravehicular operations. Quote, there was an unmistakable quality of observation to these encounters. The objects would arrive when we began EVA operations, position themselves for optimal viewing of our work, and then depart when we returned. Dr. Richard Haynes, a former NASA research scientist, notes that astronaut reports show consistent characteristics that distinguish them from conventional explanations. The objects demonstrate controlled flight, apparent intelligence, and what can only be characterized as investigative behavior toward human space activities. Chinese taikonaut Yang Liwei reported objects that approached his Shenzhou 5 spacecraft and appeared to conduct detailed observations of the vehicle's exterior. The objects showed obvious interest in our spacecraft's design and equipment. They approached close enough to examine specific components, then withdrew to observe from a distance. What troubles researchers is the apparent progression in these encounters over decades of human spaceflight. Early astronaut reports described distant observations, but more recent accounts suggest increasingly close and interactive encounters, as if whatever is observing human space activities has become more confident about revealing its presence. Chapter 5. Angels, Memories, and Other Lives. There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy. The most documented case of extreme perceptual anomalies occurred during Soviet cosmonaut Sergei Khrushchevsky's mission aboard Salyut 7 in 1985. Khrushchevsky reported experience, quote, episodes of expanded consciousness that included visions of angelic beings, experiences of living alternate lives, and direct perception of Earth's ancient history. Khrushchevsky's experience began during his third month aboard Salyut 7, starting with enhanced visual perception that allowed him to see details on Earth's surface impossible to observe from orbital altitude. I could see individual buildings, vehicles, even people walking in cities thousands of kilometers below. The level of detail was far beyond what our orbital altitude should have allowed. As his mission continued, Khrushchevsky began experiencing temporal displacement episodes where he seemed to observe Earth at different periods in its history. I would look down at Earth and see not the modern world, but forests and oceans as they existed in remote antiquity. I witnessed the formation of mountain ranges, the movement of continents across geological time. Most remarkably, Khrushchevsky reported encounters with angelic beings, luminous entities that appeared to exist in the space around Earth. The beings were composed of light but had distinct individual characteristics. They communicated through direct transmission of concepts and emotions. They appeared to be ancient guardians of Earth who had been observing human development for millennia. Soviet mission psychiatrist Dr. Mikhail Lebedev noted that Khrushchevsky's experiences shared characteristics with mystical states described in religious literature, but occurred in a context that made conventional psychological explanations inadequate. Quote, Sergei's experiences were not consistent with typical hallucinations or psychological breakdown. He maintained full awareness that these were anomalous experiences while they were occurring and continued to perform his mission duties with complete competence. American astronaut Edgar Mitchell, again, during his Apollo 14 mission, reported similar experiences of expanded consciousness that included, quote, direct knowing of cosmic interconnectedness. He wrote, I experienced a profound shift in consciousness that revealed the interconnected nature of all existence. I was no longer just Edgar Mitchell, but a conscious node in a vast network of cosmic awareness. Mitchell's experiences were particularly significant because they occurred during humanity's most technologically advanced space mission to that point, suggesting the phenomena were not related to primitive spacecraft conditions, but represented fundamental aspects of consciousness in space environments. Soviet cosmonaut Valery Polyakov reported, quote, life review experiences where he seemed to relive significant events from his past with enhanced understanding, as well as experiencing what appeared to be memories of lives that he'd never lived. Quote, I would find myself remembering childhood experiences in places I had never been and relationships with people I'd never met. These memories were as vivid as my actual life experiences. Dr. Charles Tart, a psychologist who has studied altered states of consciousness, suggests that space environments might trigger dormant capabilities of human consciousness. He wrote that astronaut reports suggest that human consciousness has capabilities that are suppressed by the sensory noise and electromagnetic environment of Earth's surface. These experiences appear to intensify with mission duration and with distance from Earth. Astronauts on longer missions and those who travel farthest from home report the most profound alterations in consciousness and perception. Chapter 6, the overview and the aftermath. We came all this way to explore the moon, and the most important thing is that we discovered the Earth. Apollo 8 astronaut William Anders captured the profound irony of space exploration, that leaving Earth teaches us more about our home planet than any terrestrial perspective could provide. But what astronauts discover often proves too large to integrate into the ordinary world they left behind. It's called the overview effect, and it describes the cognitive shift that occurs when astronauts observe Earth from space as a unified living system. But researchers have discovered that this shift often includes elements that extend far beyond environmental awareness. Apollo 14 astronaut, again Edgar Mitchell, returned to Earth fundamentally changed. Mitchell left NASA within 2 years and dedicated his career to studying consciousness, paranormal phenomena, and the relationship between science and spirituality. Quote, my experience in space convinced me that our scientific, materialist worldview is fundamentally incomplete. Consciousness extends far beyond the brain, and reality includes dimensions that mainstream science refuses to acknowledge. Mitchell's post-spaceflight career included founding the Institute of Noetic Sciences, conducting research into psychic phenomena, and advocating for fundamental revision of scientific methodology to include consciousness as a primary component of physical reality. Soviet cosmonaut Pavel Popovich became convinced that extraterrestrial intelligence was actively monitoring human space activities, spending his later years investigating UFO phenomena. Apollo 15 astronaut James Irwin experienced a religious conversion during his lunar surface activities that led him to leave NASA and become a Christian evangelist. I felt the presence of God on the moon more clearly than I had ever experienced on Earth. But not all astronauts integrate their experiences positively. Apollo 11 astronaut Buzz Aldrin struggled with depression and alcoholism for decades, partly due to what he described as, quote, the impossibility of explaining to people what it's really like out there. There were aspects of our lunar mission that I couldn't talk about for years afterward. Not because NASA prohibited it, but because I knew people wouldn't understand what we had experienced. Dr. Albert Harrison, who studied the psychological effects of spaceflight, notes that astronauts who report anomalous experiences often face unique challenges when returning to Earth. Quote, "The astronauts who have the most profound experiences in space often have the most difficulty readjusting to Earth. They've encountered realities that challenge fundamental assumptions about consciousness and existence." Now, NASA has developed psychological support programs for returning astronauts, but these programs focus primarily on readjustment to gravity and family relationships. They don't address the existential challenges faced by astronauts whose space experiences have fundamentally altered their understanding of reality. Recent neurological research has identified measurable changes in astronaut brain structure that occurred during extended spaceflight. Dr. Rachel Seidler found alterations in regions associated with spatial processing, temporal perception, and consciousness regulation. She wrote, "We're seeing evidence that spaceflight produces lasting changes in brain areas involved in processing reality and maintaining normal consciousness. These changes might explain why some astronauts report persistent alterations in perception and awareness after returning to Earth." As human space exploration expands with missions to Mars and beyond, researchers are beginning to recognize that the psychological challenges of spaceflight may be more profound and permanent than previously understood. William Anders observed that exploring the moon taught us more about Earth than any terrestrial perspective could provide. But the deepest truth may be that exploring space teaches us more about consciousness than any earthbound psychology could reveal. The voices, the presences, lights, and expanded states experienced in space suggest that isolation doesn't just reveal who we are, it reveals what we might become when normal constraints are removed. Space strips away not just gravity and atmosphere, but the electromagnetic noise that may suppress latent capabilities of human perception. As our Artemis II crew continues their lunar orbit, they join explorers who have discovered that space doesn't just change where we are, it changes what we are capable of perceiving, experiencing, and becoming. The most profound discovery of the space age may not be what exists in the cosmos around us, but what exists in the consciousness within us. Capabilities that emerge only when we venture far enough from home to discover that the boundaries between self and universe are far more permeable than we ever imagined. Until next time, remember, the most profound explorations may not be of the spaces between the stars, but of the consciousness between our thoughts, the vast inner territories that become accessible only when we venture far enough from the familiar. Thanks for listening to The Devil Within. This has been Voices from the Void, Part 2. Until next week, stay safe out there. The Devil Within is an EVO production recorded live at Bel Air Studios in Los Angeles, California. For The Devil Within, I'm your writer and host, Brandon Morgan.